What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports here on the Clemson channel at the Voice of College Football. I'm going to give you a very early projected record for Clemson based on the 2023 schedule. Here are the projections from last season, a 10-2 regular season for them. That's right where their projection was when we did our projection. I predicted them to go 11-1. I did have them losing the ACC championship, so if you throw that game in there and you say 11-2, my prediction would have been right, but didn't go exactly how I expected it to go. The FBI projected them to go 11.1 and 1.6, so basically 11-1. That would include an ACC championship game as well. And then the over-under was at 10.5. So it really felt like this team was going to be 10-2 or 11-1. That's what it looked like in the preseason. We'll see what the projection looks like for this year. This is the schedule again, and this is the scale that we'll be using. So if the game, if it stays in the white, that's a 50-50 game, a game where I think the spread will be less than a touchdown. Less than 20, over 80, games where I think the spreads will be 20 or more points. 61 to 70s, 30 to 39%. Those are games where I think it'll be a double-digit spread, 10 to 19 points in that range. And then the 20, 29, 71, 80% games, those are games where I think the spread will be about a touchdown, 6, 7, 8 points in that range. So let's get to it here, starting with the easy wins. You got two of them, Charleston Southern, Florida Atlantic. Tigers should be favored by 20 or more in both of these games. Really shouldn't be a test at all in either one of these matchups. So those are two wins you can count on, I think. And then you look at games where I think they'll be favored by double digits. I'm going to go with Wake Forest and Georgia Tech. No Sam Hartman at Wake Forest. Playing at home, you feel like Clemson will be at least a 10-point favorite in that game, 10 to 13 points probably. Georgia Tech maybe closer to 17, but not guaranteed wins necessarily, but games that Clemson should win. It would be a pretty big shock if they were to lose either one of those games. So that gives you 4 wins that you can, I wouldn't say you can count on, but you feel really good about these 4 games. That means there's 8 games still on this schedule that Clemson could potentially lose. It's a pretty tricky schedule. We're going to go to the games in the 61 to 70% range. Again, these are games I think the spread will be around a touchdown. You got Duke, Syracuse, Miami, NC State. All 4 of those games on the road. That's a big reason why they are in this category. I think those games at home, maybe some of them would be closer to the 71 to 80% range. But playing on the road, those will be tricky games. North Carolina, the one home game we've got here, just because I think North Carolina has a chance to be pretty good. But you look at Duke, I think Clemson will be favored by about 8 points. Syracuse, same thing. Miami, same thing. NC State, it might be closer to 6 points. That game is, I think, closer to a 50-50 game than any of the other games. And then North Carolina probably about an 8-point favorite there. So they'll be the clear favorite in all 5 of these games, I feel like, but not a huge favorite. And when you have that many of those types of games, chances are you're going to lose 1 or 2 of them. And that's what you're going to see here in the projection in just a second. And then that leaves Florida State, Notre Dame, and at South Carolina. So Florida State, I think we all feel like that's a 50-50 game. Clemson should be favored because they're at home. Same thing with Notre Dame. But I don't think they'll be favored by more than 4 or 5 points in both of those games. And then South Carolina, Clemson, you still kind of feel like they're a tier above South Carolina. But it's a rivalry game. South Carolina just beat them last year, and this time it's on the road. You put all that together, and yeah, I'm going to call that a 50-50 game. I do think Clemson will be favored in that one, but not by much. And so that's kind of the story here for Clemson. I think they'll be favored in every single game that they play, but that they won't be favored by a lot. They're going to more than likely have a lot of close games, and when you have a lot of close games, the odds tell you that you're going to lose some of those close games, and that's what you're going to see in this projection. Again, keep in mind, this is not my prediction. I don't do predictions until usually May, at least for sure after spring practice and all that. And I do feel like my prediction is going to be a little bit higher than this, but when you average these all out, the games in the pink I use 65%, the games in the white 50%, the blue and the green, those games are counted as wins. And when you average it out, the projection is actually 9-3 for Clemson. So that's kind of crazy to say that Clemson's going to be favored in every single game that they play, but they're only projected to go 9-3. They're projected to go 5-3 in those 8 games in the purple and in the white, just because there are so many of those games that are going to be, again, pretty close games more than likely. You average all that out, and yes, the projection does give you a 9-3 record for Clemson. Again, I feel like they're going to do better than that. If you look at the way this, could potentially go down, let's say they go 2-1 against Florida State, Notre Dame, South Carolina. That's going to put them losing 2 games when you count Duke, Syracuse, Miami, NC State, North Carolina. Seems unlikely, but I guess it could happen. Or you flip that around and say they lose one of those games. Let's say they lose to Miami or NC State on the road, and then they lose to South Carolina and either Florida State or Notre Dame. So you can see how you could get to 9-3. I think that they're probably at least going to go 10-2. But again, the projected record for Clemson based off of this formula for 2023 is 9-3.